in hopes to establish a winning culture. The Arizona Cardinals, Carolina Panthers, Denver Broncos, Houston Texans, and Indianapolis Colts. Stephen A., those are the openings now with possibly more to come. What other coaches do you think potentially teams need to move on from?
Well, first order of business, if you're a black person, if you're a black man, don't even think about the Houston Texans job. Stay the hell away from there. They got to learn how to treat black people with what they've done to Cully and Lovie Smith. That's number one. Number two, I would tell you to keep your eyes on the Los Angeles Chargers.
Okay.
Brandon Staley is young. He's taken chances that's cost him games. He's done a decent job in some people's eyes, others not so much. When you got a stud like Justin Herbert, you got to have the right coach. And if they go into Jacksonville and lose to Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson and those boys, I think Brandon Staley is going to be out of a job. And I think that's the job Sean Payton wants most, and he would deserve
More than Dallas?
Yes, because he'll have control. He has a chance to have control with the Chargers. No one's going to have control with the Cowboys as long as Jerry Jones is alive. That ain't going to happen. So if you go to the Chargers, you literally have an opportunity to have a lot of control within the franchise. That is not the case in Dallas.
Real quick before we roll, do you think Denver's a desirable job?
No. I know they have the talent, but right now, no, not because the way Russell Wilson looked this year. If Russell Wilson looks better, that would be different. But based off the way he looked this year, that is not an attractive job because they're stuck with him.
Well, maybe it's the coach. Morning.
Today we celebrate DeMar's recovery, our love for DeMar, and our gratitude.
Just a lot of feeling of uncertainty of, what it was going to feel like to go back out there. But obviously the first kickoff, and you couldn't have scripted any better.
He's got an alley down the right sideline. Touchdown, Nyheim Hines!
What a tribute to DeMar.
Just wanted to come out and play free, play loose, play for him.
They're going places for DeMar Hamlin today, guys.
A celebration of number 3, DeMar Hamlin.
He got the game ball as well as our trainers, so there's a good feeling in there right now.
So that was the scene in Buffalo yesterday. This was the scene at the UC Medical Center where DeMar Hamlin watched that miraculous moment. And if you thought that was great, the news keeps getting better as take a listen to Hamlin's medical team who just addressed the media with the best news yet.
Dr. Pritz and I are thrilled and proud on behalf of UC to report to you that DeMar Hamlin has been released and returned to Buffalo. I traveled with him to the airport this morning with our UC Health Air Care and Mobile Care crew. Dr. Pritz and I have spoken extensively with his care team in Buffalo, and I can confirm that he is doing well, and this is the beginning of the next stage of his recovery.
The goosebumps are real. The tweet is spectacular. This from DeMar Hamlin himself, grateful for the awesome care I received at UCMC. Happy to be back in Buffalo. The docs and nurses, Buffalo General, have already made me feel at home, and that is exactly where he is. What incredible news to welcome you into NFL Live with. We got a packed house here today.
We got a guest appearance.
Shefty. That's right. Shefty in the house.
We got
it's a big day.
here. We got
Shefty
royalty.
is here. We've got Swagoo. We've got RC. We've got Dano. We've got Mina joining us here in just a little bit. We got a busy 60 minutes, perhaps the busiest 60 minutes. Any day during the NFL calendar. We had all the games yesterday and a bunch of news today. And, of course, more to come on DeMar Hamlin's incredible recovery. But we start with some breaking news out of Arizona, and there are some major changes coming in the desert. Jeffrey, what do we know?
Well, it's an overhaul of the organization. The Cardinals fired their head coach, Cliff Kingsbury, 10 months after giving him a contract extension through 2027. Not only does he get fired, but their general manager, Steve Keim, who had taken leave earlier this season for health-related reasons, he takes leave. So now the Cardinals are looking for a new head coach. They're looking for a new general manager. And Michael Bidwell usually leans on Steve Keim during a process like this. He's got nobody to lean on. And so they're going to be looking for a new coach, a new GM, and it's a whole new direction for this team shortly after giving out all those extensions last offseason.
And, of course, Kyler Murray recovering from an ACL tear right now as well. Mina, you start first. What did you think of this news out of Arizona today?
It's only surprising insofar as Cliff and Steve Keim both signed those big extensions that Adam talked about. But when you set those aside, the results make this a pretty unsurprising outcome. You see Cliff's record there. If you focus on the second halves of seasons in November or later as an NFL head coach, he went 10-2 24, which, despite the fact that they had a lot of injuries on this team over the years, including at the quarterback position, just isn't acceptable in this league. And then I think the other facet is something that our colleagues, Josh Weinfuss and Jeremy Fowler, reported on earlier this season, which is the deterioration of the relationship between Cliff and Kyler, who they also gave a big extension. Kyler Murray is not going anywhere as the quarterback with his injury. He's going to be out for a while, but whoever is the head coach next year, they need to get him back to playing the way he was at the beginning, not of this season. He struggled this season, but the prior season when he was playing at an MVP level, that's job number one, and it's something that Cliff didn't do this season.
Yeah, I agree, Mina. Look, Dan played quarterback, and we always talk about on this show the relationships between quarterback and coach, and usually these guys are trying to find offensive minds when they got young quarterbacks. There's a fine line between that. I remember being in Dallas when Jason Garrett and Tony Romo had a great relationship, and we would at times ask ourselves, like, are they too friendly? Like, will the accountability really lie there between great friends? And I think that's what I saw with Kyler and Cliff. And then I saw it go to a point, and we all harken back to that clip when we saw Kyler going off on Cliff, walking off the field. Yep. You get to that point, there's 52 other men in the locker room. And there's a difference. We all understand it, especially as defensive players, and RC will speak to it. We understand the different dynamic that quarterbacks have with either head coaches, offensive coordinators. No one in the NFL is surprised that the quarterback can have a different dialogue or a different relationship with the head coach or the offensive coordinator. In this particular situation, though, I think the head coach was supplanted by the quarterback, and you can't have that. That level of respect leaves, and the other 52 are involved in.
It may be different if it's a player of a higher caliber, but Kyler's not at that level where he can kind of be the force behind the entire organization. As we look ahead here, RC, we're just a few hours removed from this news. We don't need names yet, but what are some qualities of a head coach that you will be identifying that the Cardinals need right now?
Well, the first part, when the question you asked Mina about the timing of this and it happening, my brother just got engaged, and he had been with this girl for a long time. He sets up this huge thing. He gets on his knees. He asks her to marry him, and she says, "About time." That's about how I feel about this, right? About time.
Did your brother actually just engage?
Just got engaged.
Congratulations.
Yeah, good job, Chaz.
About time.
Yeah, Chaz is engaged.
Phenomenal.
And so now you think about where they are. This is the team that gave out 3 extensions in this offseason. You know that the quarterback is going to be there, but you can't work with him in the offseason. And you've seen what happens when you just focus solely on him and that relationship. You need to get a leader of men in this locker room, someone that's going to hold the entire team accountable. And that doesn't need to be an offensive mind. It could be a guy like a DeMeco Ryans, who we've seen galvanize alpha men. When you think Fred Warner, you think Bosa, you think all of those guys who funga on that defense, those are dogs. And they obviously follow and respect a guy like DeMeco Ryans. Then you get you a young Dan Orlovsky type, right, that could go in there and butter Kyler up,
but
make
better
sure
dressed,
he has
but better
everything
dressed.
that he wants, and then now DeMeco can make sure he sets the tone in that locker room.
I agree with a lot of what RC is saying. So
you got something to tell me?
I was going to say, including the part about hiring yourself?
Yeah.
You got news for us here?
Okay.
No.
Shefty will break it first.
Yeah, Shefty will know first. I think there's this reality that there's a lot of this job that is not appealing. I understand that there's only 32 of them in the world, but they don't have a general manager. You have a quarterback that's going to be coming off an ACL tear, so the new coach that brings in a new offense doesn't get to implement it with the starting quarterback in the future, and he's coming off of that injury. And so you sit there and go, what fits that mold? Because the reality is there's a lot that has to be pieced together for this to have any potential success attached to Kyler. And my immediate mind goes to Kyler has to be inside a Sean Payton, Gary Kubiak, Kyle Shanahan offense to have any type of hope for success in the NFL.
Well, you think about everything that this franchise has now been through in the last 10 or so months. They fire their head coach. Their GM takes a leave of absence for health-related issues and then steps down. They relieve 2 assistant coaches of their jobs during the season for off-the-field incidents. They had their star wide receiver suspended. They had Kyler Murray tear his ACL. Zach Ertz tear his ACL. Yeah. There's a lot that this organization has been through.
It's no organizational discipline throughout. You have to bring in people that will do that.
And J.J. Watt is retiring, too, one of the men who certainly did hold others accountable in that organization. It's a busy day, Shefty, so lots more to get to. What's going on in Houston?
Houston has made a coaching change, and they have fired Lovie Smith, which, think about this. They will now have their 4th different head coach in 4 years to open the 2023 season. They one and done David Culley. They one and done Lovie Smith. Romeo Crennel wasn't there very long.
Yeah.
They have just cycled through coaches like nobody's business, but they put out for other people like D'Amico Ryans. A request is in with the 49ers. We'll see what they wind up doing.
Yeah, when you look at the last 2 coaching hirings, those were jokes, right? Those were, we're going to get a guy, we're not going to set him up for success, and we also aren't going to give him long enough to even build anything. Lovie Smith was fired when he was hired. David Culley was hired to be fired. And so now as you go forward, and we talk about the Arizona Cardinals job not being attractive, what makes this attractive to the next coach? What lets that coach know he's going to have an opportunity to build there? And if you're an African-American head coach, even though there are only 32 teams, it would only be 31 if I was that candidate.
By the way, they do not have the number 1 pick in the draft. That belongs to Chicago now. You have to tell us about L.A. and Sean McVay, who seems to be undecided right now.
Well, listen, his immediate future, coaching-wise, is in limbo. And I think this season, the losing has taken its toll. The injuries have taken their toll. Think back to last season. He vacillated about whether or not to come back after they won the Super Bowl. This year, they didn't even win the Super Bowl. They had a terrible record. So now he's taking some time away to see whether he wants to coach again.
Well, Shefty mentions last season. That also took an emotional toll to kind of go on that Super Bowl run and making sure all those parts fit together with Matthew Stafford. Then he hit on this season with the injuries and the expectations and candidly the failures. And now if you look to the future, you go, we're old, we're expensive, and we don't have any type of draft capital to try to rebuild this. My question for Sean McVay that the Rams need to ask is, do you not want to coach or do you not want to coach here? Because if it's not want to coach here, you trade him and try to recoup some of that draft capital to rebuild your organization.
Let's go to Denver now, Shefty. Really rich owners going big game hunting.
Yeah, listen, they spent a lot of money in their franchise, and they are prepared to spend a lot of money on their head coach. And it would probably take a lot of money to go hire Sean Payton. It would take a lot of compensation to the New Orleans Saints to bring him to any particular city. Sean Payton has spoken with the Broncos owners. He's not allowed to meet with them until January 17th. January 17th is the first time Sean Payton can meet with teams. That's one night after the Cowboys for the Buccaneers.
What the back of that paper look like?
It's blank.
That's what Denver should do to Sean Payton. That's exactly what